What's up, everybody? I'm Doc Raj, co-founder of the Performance Rehab Revolution Summit, and we are on a mission to revolutionize the rehab game, to elevate the industry, and to help clinicians dominate when it comes to athletes and active adults. First off, a huge thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the revolution, and thank you for leading the charge to push our profession, our industry forward. We've got an incredible lineup in store for you, and I cannot wait to hear how these talks impact your practice, your career, and maybe most importantly, the lives of your patients. So let's dive in and get things kicked off. A little bit about myself. I'm the founder of Move Athletics, which is the top tier clinic in Western Mass for athletes and active adults. We have a strong reputation for helping our community live pain-free and stay active, even when all other options have failed them. It's pretty awesome to see people coming from far and wide just to work with us. You can also catch me co-hosting the Performance Rehab Authority podcast, which is on YouTube or wherever you guys want to listen to your podcast. And then if you're into the Gram scene, hop on over to at Doc Raj, Doc.Raj, where I am always dropping some valuable content for you guys. So I am a Marine Corps veteran, and I have a deployment both to Iraq and Afghanistan. So you can say I've seen my fair share of challenging situations. This is a photo of me washing my clothes in a bucket in the middle of Marja, Afghanistan, back in 2010, middle of nowhere. After my military service, I transitioned into the world of fitness, where I became the head coach at a CrossFit gym and honed my skills with athletes there for many years, eventually partnered in that gym. And that's what even led me to PT in the first place, right? I saw how massively underserved the athletic community was. So I went and got my DPT and then took it a couple of steps further by completing a residency and not one, but two fellowship programs. Why would I do that? Because I felt like I had so much to learn and that I just wanted to be the best clinician that I could be. And that was the best route that I could find at the time. So after years of hands-on mentoring and coaching clinicians in person, I co-founded the Performance Rehab Authority Certification, where now I personally mentor and coach clinicians all around the country to achieve the same results without all the sacrifices that I had to make. So gone, you guys, are the days of sleeping 4 hours a night, working 80-hour weeks, missing out on time with family, or having to spend over 40 grand on education, all like I had to. But enough about my journey. Let's focus on yours, guys. We're going to talk about how to become an expert clinician fast. But first, we have to start by briefly examining the process of learning, which is comprised of 6 distinct stages here. And these are the stages. We're going to quickly go through each one, so not to bore the hell out of you, but pay attention because it explains why weekend courses are not effective. And the first stage is acquisition, right? Also known as information gathering. This is where your journey begins and you're collecting information about the skill, whether you're reading, you're watching tutorials, you're attending courses, or you're watching your coworkers, you're observing others. You start understanding, hopefully, some fundamental concepts, theories, and principles as you build a knowledge base. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. Question for you. How many of you guys have read books, listen to podcasts, watch YouTubes, and then done absolutely nothing with that information? I know I've been guilty of it, and I call that prolific content consumption. If you're not actually doing anything with the knowledge, it is a complete waste of time, right? People like to feel productive, like to fool themselves into thinking they're being productive by just endlessly gathering knowledge. But the real progress comes from moving on to the next step. In order to truly get better and to learn, you have to move on to the next stage, which is comprehension and initial practice. This is where you start to understand by interpreting and internalizing the steps involved. You move into a guided practice. Usually this happens, or ideally this happens, underneath the guidance of a mentor or a coach and using detailed instructions. Sometimes it's one or the other, but preferably you've got both, right? At this stage, it is common to engage in part task training, right? Meaning that you're breaking things down into smaller, more manageable chunks as you learn it. And then you get into the conscious competence stage, where you are engaging in deliberate practice and focusing on structured, intentional practice sessions, right? At this point, you're going to be really highly aware of your actions, thinking about them and making a conscious effort to apply what you're learning or what you've learned. Here, Feedback and correction are crucial, right? Because practice makes permanent, not perfect. You have to receive feedback on your performance, identify mistakes, and make the necessary corrections because you're going to be building automaticity, right? As you achieve smoother and more efficient performance through repeated practice, right? This stage is characterized by repetition and refinement, which means that you need to have constant feedback, right? This is where the skill becomes more ingrained and you make fewer errors. As practice continues, you start performing things more fluidly with less conscious effort, building what we would call fluency in whatever it is that you're learning, right? And then that leads us into the mastery and adaptation stage, where the skill then becomes fully ingrained into your repertoire, into your tool belt, right? Allowing you to perform it effectively in various contexts and be able to adapt it into new situations, right? This stage involves what I call skill integration and innovative application, right? It doesn't stop there, though. You need to be striving for continuous improvement. Even after reaching a high level of proficiency, continual practice and learning are essential to maintain and progress. At this point, you're able to and should be teaching and mentoring others, which only reinforces and deepens your knowledge in your skill set. After reaching a high level of the skill, of understanding of the skill, right, or reaching a high level of proficiency, ongoing practice and learning are essential to continue to maintain and progress. And then when you have that deep understanding of the skill, you can now mentor and teach others, which not only reinforces your own mastery, but continues to contribute to the development of your community as well, right? The key throughout this process is that each stage involves a cyclical process of learning, applying knowledge, making mistakes, receiving feedback, making corrections, right? And then applying, which leads to progressive improvement and eventually mastery of the skill. All right. So now that we got through that, how do we apply this to rehab clinicians? And that brings us to secret number 1, which is our 6-step framework that we call the Rapid Mastery Blueprint, which takes you from wherever you are currently to becoming the expert clinician. And this is it. This is the Rapid Mastery Blueprint. Let's dig into each one of these stages individually. The first step is to get vault access. This is where you gather the information essential for patient care, clinical reasoning, and progressions. Think of this as the book smart part of your journey. It's about acquiring the background knowledge, but it doesn't mean you have to be bogged down with all the unnecessary details or rote memorization. Instead, focus on acquiring actionable knowledge by prioritizing the most crucial information first. Cut out all the fluff and concentrate on learning how to actually assess and treat patients effectively. Once you get vault access, it's time to dive into the wealth of knowledge. But where do you start? Well, you have to focus on impact, right? What I mean by that is start with the heavy hitters, the most common body parts that people seek rehab for. Learn what's going to have the most impact on the most people while also having the most carryover to other common issues. Think about it. Does it make sense to start with learning about finger and toe injuries when the majority of healthcare costs are definitely not from finger and toe injuries? No, right? You might want to start with learning about the most common injuries and the most common misdiagnoses first, right? Let's prioritize learning about what is going to have the biggest impact on the most amount of patients first. That makes sense, right? All right. So then, this is the understanding concepts part of your learning journey. Okay. This is where you're going to grasp the fundamental concepts, the theories, and the principles that are underlying the process. To effectively understand each body part and each movement pattern, it is crucial for you to break down the evaluation process into organized chunks. For each body part, consider the anatomy, the common injuries, assessment techniques, and treatment options. Similarly, for each movement pattern, right, break it down into its components, understanding the biomechanics, the common dysfunctions, the assessment methods, and the corrective strategies. Recognize patterns here, guys, right? This organized approach not only makes learning easier to follow and to understand, but also allows you to begin to recognize the patterns that overlap. And pattern recognition is the biggest difference between a novice and an expert clinician. I'll say it again, so write this down. Pattern recognition is the biggest difference between a novice and an expert clinician, right? By identifying commonalities across different evaluations and movement patterns, you will develop a deeper understanding of the rehab principles and enhance your clinical reasoning skills. Through the journey of learning rehabilitation, passive learning will not cut it, okay? You must engage your brain, think critically, and actively reflect on the information that you acquire. You have to think it through from different perspectives and consider how each concept applies to past scenarios that you've encountered, okay? Like reflect on the patients that you've had in the past, reflect on the patients that you have now, and think about how you can apply these concepts in the future. This is not about passively gaining knowledge. It's about an active and an involved approach, okay? Actively reflect on your experiences, challenge your assumptions, and seek out new perspectives. I'll say that again. Actively seek out new perspectives. By actively engaging with the material and applying it to real world scenarios, you're going to enhance your learning, you're going to deepen your understanding, and you're going to become a much more effective and much more insightful clinician. Period. Comprehension and initial practice mark the second step of the learning journey, right? It's where application brings learning to life. Reading books and listening to lectures provides valuable knowledge, but true learning occurs through implementation and application. Why? Because real life doesn't follow a textbook, okay? Humans are complex beings who love to complicate things. As a rehab clinician, you have to deal with the human that's in front of you. This includes addressing the psychological, the emotional, and the social elements, not just the painful body part. You cannot get everything you need from a book. True mastery comes from hands-on experience, from navigating the intricacies of human interaction and adapting your approach to each individual's unique needs. All right, so now that you've gathered the information from the vault, it's time to interpret and internalize this knowledge with intention. This step is crucial for effective application in clinical practice, right? Think about how you would take a patient through an evaluation using the tests or the knowledge that you've learned. Consider how this applies to your current patients and how it fits in with your past patients. Utilize active reflection, right? And that is spending just 10 minutes at the end of the day actively reflecting on just one patient. Reflect on the assessment process, the treatment strategies, and the outcome achieved or not achieved, right? You don't want to just focus on the things that went well, and you don't want to just focus on the things that didn't go well. You need a good mix of both, but keep it simple, all right? Do not overcomplicate this. The goal is just to engage in intentional reflection and gain insights that will inform and enhance your clinical practice moving forward. Now, it's really time to start using your knowledge in the clinic, right? This is the initial practice phase where you're still comprehending the information for a new skill and you're putting it into action. Ideally, this process should be under the guidance of a mentor, because with their support, with the support of a mentor, you can receive direct feedback along the way, ensuring that you're on the right track. Initial practice, again, often involves breaking the skill down into smaller, more manageable parts. For example, selecting which tests you might want to use in a given evaluation, breaking down those tests step by step to make sure you can do them well, and then grouping the results of those tests into manageable chunks to be able to synthesize and analyze them, right? Focus on putting it all together fluidly and understanding what the information is telling you, even though it might still be difficult for you at this point. right? Through guided practice and deliberate effort, you will overcome challenges and you will experience growth. But it takes repetition, right? Now, with all of that, you are deliberately practicing and nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So it's time to intentionally apply that skill over and over and over in your practice with the goal of mastery. Deliberate practice involves repeating the skill over and over again with intention, chunking the skill into manageable parts as you go, even if you're still struggling to fully understand it at this point. Just write down the questions that you have as you go, and where things are unclear so you can reflect on it later and you can ask your mentor about it. This continuous active learning process ensures that you're constantly improving and refining your skills. Continue to seek guidance from your mentor throughout this entire process and welcome the feedback as opportunities for growth. With each repetition, with each new cycle through learning, you're going to gain deeper insights and move closer and closer to mastery. All right. So you got to keep in mind too, early on, mistakes are expected when you're learning a new skill. So it is crucial to have a way of identifying these mistakes and making corrections so you can facilitate learning and growth. We must have a systematic approach to identifying mistakes, whether they're physical mistakes, implementation mistakes, or thought process mistakes, right? This allows us to address them effectively and prevent them from becoming ingrained poor habits, right? They become ingrained. You know what I mean? Either way, get feedback from a mentor and through self-assessment. Okay. Remember, when you're learning, you don't know what you don't know. That's why it's important to write down questions when things are unclear and ask your mentor as soon as you can about them, right? Don't wait to write them down because you're going to forget them. As soon as you have a chance to write them down, write it down, right? Even if it's in the middle of a patient treatment, write things down. So the mentor can clarify, they can redirect, and they can help you make sense of the information. Then you get to take your new understanding and go apply it again. This process is repeated over and over and over. And then the understanding and the application continually improve. In phase 4, your skills are evolving towards automaticity, right? Regular feedback, correction, and repetition have now begun to refine your abilities, which enables you to apply them with increased clarity and increased confidence. As your skills now are becoming more ingrained, errors start to diminish and the confidence starts to bloom, okay? Each repetition enhances your fluidity and reduces the amount of conscious effort you have to make. Through practice, reliance on the mentors and the resources will naturally start to diminish as you improve. Enhanced clinical reasoning and understanding of it all propel you steadily towards mastery. Refining your skills leads to fewer and fewer mistakes over time. Each treatment session advances you closer to mastery, right? Improves your confidence each time you successfully apply it. Step 5. At this point, your skill set has reached refinement, okay? You're effectively applying it across diverse patient contexts and you're adapting it to novel situations. Now you have the freedom and the confidence to personalize your approach. This means modifying, this means combining, this means innovating, okay? Applying your skills creatively and effectively in various contexts and scenarios. You get to integrate all of these different puzzle pieces and different tools that you acquire from weekend courses and interactions with other clinicians into your practice in a very intentional and meaningful manner, okay? Remember, perfection is never attained. Even at a high level of proficiency, continuous improvement is imperative. Even as experts must continually practice and learn in order to maintain and further develop their skill set to ward off regression, right? That you have to guard against laziness and you have to guard against complacency. With each patient encounter, challenge yourself to prove your assumptions wrong rather than skipping steps, right? Vigorous testing is key. Strive to identify patterns swiftly while actively seeking to disprove your hypothesis. Teaching is a powerful skill to be able to continue. Teaching is a powerful tool to be able to continue your skill development, because students have questions, right? And they have questions that offer fresh perspectives, insights, and things that you probably haven't thought of yet. And think about it. If you can't teach something, do you really, truly understand it? Probably not. So here we go again, guys. These are the steps that a clinician would take to become an expert, keeping the stages of learning in mind. Consider the stages of learning someone must navigate. Do you think they can accomplish all of that in a weekend, or even in 4 weekend courses, right? Most Con Ed courses offer, either video materials, an in-person event, or some resources. Rarely do they encompass all 3 components. Even more rarely do they actually include real mentorship, where you receive feedback on your learning journey as you return to the clinic to help you develop long-term, right? In a typical weekend course, you're inundated with information beforehand and you're equipped with new tools during the course. However, right, you often leave without the understanding that connects everything together. Then it's 3 weeks later without the freshness of the material and lacking the immediate mentorship. What do you do? You're left with unanswered questions, which means that you revert back to old habits and you really only keep a fraction of what you've learned, right? The existing model falls short. It's crucial to break down the stages of learning and align educational experiences accordingly. We need to follow along with how people actually learn to foster true expertise. So you might be thinking, this is all great, but I don't have a vault or a mentor, which leads us into step number 1, finding a mentor. All right. Mentors and coaches act as cheat codes, and they propel your growth at an unprecedented pace, right? They help you level up unbelievably fast. Seek out individuals who have invested extensively in their own mentors, in courses, and in hands-on experience, right? Find mentors who have honed their skills, refined their methods, and developed an overarching framework proven to be successful with clients over and over again. Not just that, but look for mentors whose methodologies have been adopted and implemented by other clinicians with positive results. This demonstrates real-world applicability and the effectiveness of their approaches, okay? By learning from mentors like that, you position yourself for success and ensure your growth is built upon a solid foundation of tested strategies and techniques. And in today's digital age, accessing qualified mentors has literally never been easier, okay? With the resources available at your fingertips, finding guidance and support is literally a click or 2 away. All you have to do is search the social media channels, right? Follow people who resonate, engage with their content, explore their expertise, dive into YouTube channels and podcasts. Like, these platforms often feature a multitude of experts that are sharing valuable insights and advice. Take advantage of the vast array of educational content that's available online. Then actually reach out to potential mentors and inquire about formal mentorship programs. The key word here is formal. If that person does not offer a formal mentorship program, ask for recommendations of reputable programs or resources, right? Leverage their expertise to identify other avenues of mentorship and professional development along the way. If you guys want a deeper dive into the topic of mentorship and professional development, you can check out episode 10 of our podcast. So look up the Performance Rehab Authority podcast, go to episode 10, and we have a whole episode on finding this stuff. So you have to realize too that knowledge and experience come at a cost, whether it's in the form of time or money. You can acquire experience and some knowledge through years of struggle, or you can invest in it financially, right? Remember, money is renewable, but time is not. You can always make more money, but the time lost is irreversible. And the struggles that you have in that time are irreversible. Having a dedicated coach that you've paid for offers distinct, significant advantages over relying on free advice from peers or friends, right? Peer mentorship often lacks structure and priority, right? Which leads to wasted time and limited progress. Yeah, okay. Many companies offer free mentorship, right? But that is a recruitment tactic on their part. Their main priority is maximizing employee productivity, right? As a result, those programs lacked effectiveness and they lack structure, which ultimately hinders your progress, as their primary goal for you is to be a profitable employee, right? Where your primary goal is to be a badass clinician, they just want you to make the company more money. Investing in a coach puts you years ahead of trying to navigate challenges alone. Professional coaching provides structured guidance tailored to your needs and accelerates your growth and development. All right. Ultimately, investing in coaching aligns with your priorities and your aspirations, ensuring that your resources are directed towards meaningful self improvement and advancement. If something's important to me, I hire a coach. Why? Because it puts me years ahead of where I would have been otherwise. Every single time I do it, that's the result. Plus, I figure I'm going to spend that money on something anyways, right? So it might as well be something that's important to me and something that makes me better. Sound fair? So you have to do your part, guys. You have to spend dedicated time learning from your mentors. It doesn't have to be an obscene amount of time, but you have to dedicate time to learning. You have to observe how they problem solve, how they communicate, how they structure tasks, and understand their underlying thought processes. Dive deep into understanding the why behind their actions. It's their job to help them or to help you. So, like, don't hesitate to ask questions. You have hired them for a service and they are now obligated to deliver on that service that you have paid them for, right? So, seek clarification, seek guidance, and get insights to enhance your learning experience. While your mentor provides guidance, the onus is on you to take action, right? If you've hired a coach to help you achieve your fitness goals, for example, you have to commit to making the dietary changes, lifting the weights, and doing the conditioning, right? Ultimately, it's about following the instructions and understanding the underlying rationale. My success in business and as a clinician stems from being pretty adept at following directions, following instructions, right? Particularly when I understand the why behind them. Your willingness to learn and execute tasks effectively contributes significantly to your progress and your achievements. So, quick summary of the points, guys. One, master the foundations, right? Focus on mastering the fundamentals, prioritize key concepts over trivial details, and listen for underlying issues, not just surface level problems. Step two is initial practice. You have to identify the gaps in your application of knowledge, keep track of your questions and areas of uncertainty. Step number three is to seek the feedback, okay? Ask for clarification and ask for explanations. Understand the reasoning behind the feedback. Step four is repeat it as needed. Continuously cycle through practice and feedback loops as many times as you need to. And then step five is to commit to deliberate practice, right? Embrace ongoing learning and improvement. Recognize that progress requires intentional effort. Remember, improvement is deliberate, not accidental, okay? Consistently apply these steps to maximize your growth under mentorship. Who wants to avoid spending tens of thousands of dollars, sacrificing years of your life, or trying to piece it all together on your own? You can save time, money, and effort by leveraging mentorship to accelerate your growth and avoid unnecessary mistakes. A great mentor provides a clear roadmap for your journey, guiding you from point A to point B with precision. By following their proven path, you can avoid aimless wandering and ensure steady progress towards your goals. Once you've mastered the fundamentals and you understand the roadmap, you can begin to explore and customize your approach. However, without a clear direction, you risk spinning in circles and making very little progress or no progress. Have you guys ever heard a clinician use the phrase, mobilize what's stiff and strengthen what's weak? I've heard it a lot. And that might sound like a simple solution, but it's usually not sufficient. If it were that easy, nobody would struggle with patient care. Am I right? In our industry, there is a pervasive barrier to learning, right? Many clinicians are very eager to improve, yet they struggle to find the right resources and the right guidance. Not everyone is willing to put their entire life on pause for years, sacrificing precious time with their families in pursuit of professional development. Fortunately, with the internet at our fingertips, there is a wealth of knowledge available, accessible anytime and anywhere. You no longer have to choose between career advancement and being present with your family. All right, listen up. I'm laying out all the steps that you need to skyrocket your success. But hey, let me give you the inside scoop. The Performance Rehab Authority Certification is the solution to all of the problems that we found with traditional continuing education programs. No more wasting time or money, just real actionable strategies to take your career to the next level. And guess what? If you're attending this summit, which you are because you're here, we've got something extra special cooked up just for you. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on what we've got in store for you on Sunday. It's going to be epic, right? Gone are the days of making big sacrifices to become a great clinician. You can achieve greatness from the comfort of your own home. Say goodbye to long hours away from your family or from missing out on important moments, really. It's time to level up your career without sacrificing your personal life. Who's ready to have all of this laid out step by step for them? If you're nodding along, then keep your eyes glued to your inbox this Sunday. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we've got in store for you guys. Let's dive into a couple of patient cases that left clinicians scratching their heads, and let's uncover what was missing from the equation. Hold on your seats, folks, because this is where the real learning begins. Let me paint a picture for you. We had a clinician facing a tricky case, a patient with insidious onset lateral elbow pain that only flared up during golfing sessions. Despite 6 weeks of treatment, which included a laundry list of interventions such as dry needling, soft tissue work, thoracic mobility, eccentric loading of the local tissues, and even taking a pretty good break from golf, the patient was still reporting discomfort every time they tried to go back to golf. But here's the plot twist. Once the clinician honed their thought process and pinpointed the root cause of the pain, magic happened. Within 2 weeks, the patient was able to get back on the golf course pain-free. So what was the missing link in this tale of frustration? Here, it all boiled down to test selection. Without choosing the right test, the clinician couldn't gather the right information, which was leaving them with an incomplete picture of the problem. And as we all know, incomplete pictures lead to incomplete solutions. This case underscores the importance of organizing your thought process and selecting the appropriate tests to obtain a comprehensive understanding of the patient's condition. It's not just about throwing treatments at a problem and hoping that something sticks. It's about carefully assessing, diagnosing, and addressing the underlying issues to achieve lasting results. Let's dive into another example, right? There was a clinician facing a patient who was experiencing chest, collarbone, and AC joint pain during horizontal pressing movements. Despite 8 weeks of treatment, which include interventions like rotator cuff stabilization exercises, form modifications, thoracic mobility work, and scapular stability exercises, the patient's progress had plateaued over the last 3 to 4 weeks-ish. Right? And the patient continued to experience achiness randomly throughout the day and couldn't exceed about 75% effort with the horizontal pressing movements without pain. And both the clinician and the patient were feeling a bit frustrated, right? But here's where the story takes a turn. We had the clinician dig deeper into the patient's symptom behavior and ask specific questions, uncovering patterns that they previously missed. All right, armed with this newfound insight, the clinician adjusted their treatment approach, and guess what happened next? Just 3 weeks later, that same patient hit a personal record bench press in the clinic, completely pain-free. So what was the missing piece in this puzzle, right? The clinician didn't ask the right questions. If they had known what to ask and what to listen for, they could have massively shortcut the process and spared both themselves and the patient a whole lot of unnecessary frustration. This case highlights the importance of effective communication and subjective assessment in uncovering the root cause of a patient's pain and guiding targeted treatment strategies for optimal outcomes. All right. This is our final example here, guys. So let's dive into it. We had a clinician that was grappling with a runner suffering from posterior knee pain. Despite 4 weeks of treatment, there were 0 signs of improvement, right? The clinician had tried a multitude of interventions, including dry needling, stretching, loading with isometrics, progressing into eccentrics, all while adhering to the rule of no pain levels greater than 3 to 4 out of 10 during exercise, right? They also had targeted hip stability, glute activation, and calf strengthening exercises, yet nothing seemed to be making a difference. The patient, in a valiant effort to remain optimistic, kept trying to find the silver linings in their discomfort, but deep down, both the clinician and the patient knew that something wasn't working. Here's the kicker, right? The clinician had tested everything. They were inundated with disorganized information, making it nearly impossible to discern what was truly relevant to the pain. They had so many findings and were attempting to address them all, but they couldn't sift through the data to determine what was crucial and what was merely noise, right? Like, enter our hero, the algorithm. By reassessing following a structured assessment algorithm, the clinician was able to streamline the information and simplify their approach. And guess what? It worked like a charm. With all the data organized and the treatment plan clear, the clinician was able to turn the situation around immediately. This case demonstrates the importance of structured assessment protocols in guiding clinical decision-making and streamlining treatment approaches for optimal outcomes. Sometimes the key to success lies in simplicity and organization. Now, let's unveil secret number 2, how to avoid the common pitfalls. So let's unpack the 6 major mistakes that clinicians often encounter, right? Number 1 is the lack of specific questioning. Many clinicians falter by not knowing precisely what questions to ask each patient, preventing them from identifying important patterns and reading between the lines to grasp the underlying problem beyond the symptoms. Number 2 is poor test selection, right? Selecting the wrong test can lead to a plethora of completely irrelevant findings. While clinicians have numerous tests at their disposal, not all of them provide relevant information pertinent to this specific patient's condition. Number 3 is going to be difficulty synthesizing data, right? Some clinicians struggle to group relevant findings and synthesize the data they collected efficiently. Without this ability, they may lack confidence and struggle to explain situations clearly to patients. Number 4 is inadequate exercise prescription. Nobody knows that this is a problem in our field, right? Crafting appropriate exercise prescriptions is a challenge for many clinicians. Without tailored exercises targeting the patient's specific needs, the treatment outcomes definitely might suffer. I think we can agree on that, right? Number 5 is going to be a limited understanding of mechanical stressors. Understanding mechanical stressors intimately is crucial for effective treatment. Clinicians who lack this understanding will, I was going to say may, but they will overlook important factors that are impacting the patient's condition. And number 6 is the failure to set appropriate expectations. Setting realistic expectations is key, yet many clinicians fail in this aspect. Clear communication about the treatment outcomes and timelines is essential for patient satisfaction and compliance. All right, let's dive into the importance of asking the right questions. It is the cornerstone of successful treatment, but it's often overlooked. Picture this. You're in an evaluation, firing off questions, and your patient's giving you all the details. But are you listening for the words, or are you listening to the problem, right? Are you honing in on the core issue that's beneath the surface? As clinicians, we're detectives of sorts, right? Deciphering between what's crucial and what's just noise. Patients want to help, bless their hearts, but they will throw everything at you, right? Every twinge, every Google diagnosis, everything that, like, even great Aunt Gertrude's 2 cents, right? Everything that they have amassed as they think knowledge, they're going to throw it at you all at once. And it's sort of like sorting through a cluttered attic looking for a hidden treasure, right? Here's the kicker. amidst the chaos, like we have to make our patients feel seen and heard and valued while also maintaining focus and zeroing in on their main concern. It is a very delicate dance of empathy and focus. Because here's the thing, if you stumble here, if you can't sift through the noise to pinpoint the real issue, you're setting yourself up for a cascade of errors down the line. And trust me, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. The second mistake, let's talk about test selection, a critical juncture in the diagnostic process, right? Imagine this. You're drowning in a sea of details, trying to make sense of the patient's barrage of symptoms and anecdotes. In this whirlwind of information, how can you possibly choose the right test, right? When they've just told you about 50 different pain points that they have, and they're trying to connect them all together and tell you what's wrong with them, right? How can you select the tools that will lead you to clarity and ultimately to the root of the problem? Like, the truth is, if your subjective assessment is clouded by unnecessary details, your test selection will suffer. You'll end up testing everything under the sun, hoping to stumble upon a solution, but this shotgun approach only tends to lead to more confusion, frustration, and oftentimes dead ends. You see, without a clear understanding of the patient's core issue, your tests are just a shot in the dark. Yeah, you might find impairments, sure, but are they relevant to the problem at hand? And are they steering you towards a solution, or are they just adding more noise? It's a dangerous game, right? One that's all too easy to fall into if you're not asking the right questions. Let's dive into another common stumbling block for clinicians, synthesizing patient data, right? Picture this scenario. You're drowning in a sea of test results because you've tested everything under the sun, and now you're trying desperately to make sense of it all. And it's a daunting task, to say the least. So how do you take this jumble of information and turn it into a coherent narrative? Like, how do you distill it down into its essence, making it crystal clear, not just to yourself, but to your patient? And this is where things get tricky, right? Many clinicians find themselves grasping at straws, struggling to draw correlations and explanations out of thin air. They mean well, of course, but in their quest to provide answers, they often end up muddying the waters even further. And here's the thing, right? Patients trust you implicitly. They see you as the expert, the authority figure. So when you offer up explanations that are maybe a bit shaky or uncertain, they latch onto them and build their beliefs around them. But what happens when those beliefs are flawed, when they lead the patient down a path of resignation and despair? That is why it's crucial for you to be able to synthesize your findings with clarity and confidence. You need to be able to present them in a way that's not just understandable, but compelling. Your patient should walk away feeling empowered, armed with knowledge, and a clear path forward. Because when you can distill complex concepts down to their essence, when you can make the intricate workings of the human body accessible to everyone, to even at the fifth grade level, well, that's when you know you're truly mastering your craft. Right. Let's talk about a common pitfall that many clinicians fall into, which is using a one-size-fits-all approach to exercise prescription. You see, it's tempting to reach for the same set of exercises for similar diagnoses, especially when those exercises are considered like the gold standard for a particular condition. But here's the thing, right? Pain points and goals may be similar across patients, but the underlying causes, the root stressors, can vary significantly. And that's where the cookie cutter approach falls short. Take, for example, a standard treatment for neck pain that I've seen at many clinics. Usually looks something like this up on your screen, right? Chin tucks, nice neck isos in different directions, chin tuck with extension isometrics, chin tucks with liftoff, seated scapular traction, banded rows, band pull aparts, and like things like 5 minutes of cervical rotation on a deflated ball. Now, let me ask you, what exactly is this plan addressing? Like, how is this helping the patient? When I look at this list, I see a generic approach that fails to consider the specific impairments and mechanical stressors unique to each patient. Sure, strengthening the deep neck flexors might be beneficial, but what about thoracic mobility, interscapular strength, upper quarter movement compensations? Let's not forget about the potential risks of certain exercises, chin tucks, For instance, they can aggravate cervical shear force sensitivity, especially when combined with lifting off, right? A more suitable alternative might be a nose nod, which is a subtle but significant difference. Ultimately, effective exercise prescription requires a nuanced understanding of each individual patient's needs and challenges, right? It's about addressing the root cause of their pain and their dysfunction, not just following a one size fits all protocol. So next time you reach for that bucket of exercises, ask yourself, am I truly tailoring this plan to meet my patient's unique needs? If not, it might be time to rethink your approach. Let's dive into another scenario. Patient walks in with low back pain, but they're still active. What do they get hit with? Right? Maybe some TRA work with marching or bent knee fallouts and dead bugs and straight leg raises with transverse abdominis bracing, some light squats, some bird dogs, prone press ups if there's an extension bias. Maybe they're working into some Jefferson curls if they're flexion sensitive. Now, here's the problem with this. This looks like a standard plan, right? That's part of the problem. Does it address the patient's specific needs and mechanical stressors? Is the transverse abdominis truly the issue here? Right? What about the loading, segmental extension, and shear forces involved in marching and dead bugs? Are these exacerbating the patient's sensitivities? Right? What about the combination of loading, extension, shearing, and the neural tension that happens with a straight leg raise? Is that truly beneficial to this patient? Now, let's not forget about the empowerment piece of it as well. Like, is the patient being educated on how to modify their daily activities to avoid exacerbating their pain throughout the day? Are they equipped to set up their workstation to cook, clean, and exercise without unnecessarily causing further pain? Most importantly, have you asked yourself why you're prescribing each specific exercise? What is the purpose behind each one? Just copying what the clinician next to you is doing, even if they've done extensive training, won't lead to better outcomes for you. It's not going to make you a better clinician. It's time to rethink your approach and to tailor your interventions to meet the unique needs of each patient. Here's a third example, guys, right? Plantar fasciitis. This gets misdiagnosed and mistreated or treated inappropriately all of the time. Here's the common bucket of exercises someone gets thrown, right? They get a great toe stretch, do a lacrosse ball rollout, maybe they do some towel scrunches or some like fishers, which is a weird thing with your foot if you guys don't know what it is, right? Some single leg balance, some heel raises, toe yoga, maybe some marble pickup. First of all, this treatment plan isn't even addressing the number one risk factor for plantar fasciitis. Secondly, have you cleared the differentials? Like, have you cleared the myotomal testing, reflexes, and mechanical stressors from the spine? Like, doing active range of motion to clear the lumbar spine, by the way, is about as good as not checking anything at all. So if that's what you're doing, it's completely useless. Have you differentiated thoroughly between the lumbar spine, the tibialis posterior, the flexor digitorum longus, the flexor hallucis longus, the abductor hallucis, like at a minimum? Just because somebody has pain on the bottom of their foot does not mean it's caused by the plantar fascia. It is crucial to differentiate between the various potential causes and not just jump to conclusions solely based on symptom location, right? Always approach this diagnosis specifically, but all diagnosis, with skepticism and ensure you're addressing the root cause of the issue. The fourth mistake is insidious, right? It often goes unnoticed. It starts with admiration for a coworker's skill set, and it gradually transitions into blindly adopting their interventions without questioning why. Over time, clinicians tend to stop asking why altogether and just apply interventions without proper testing or critical thinking because they've just fallen into a rut of this is what I do, right? They're not attempting to prove themselves wrong all of the time. Using the same interventions for every patient with the same diagnosis or similar diagnosis is ineffective and it's merely busy work, right? Our goal as clinicians is to help individuals transition from their sickest to their strongest selves as quickly as possible. So how can we expedite the process of reducing pain and restoring function for our patients? All right. The fifth big blunder that clinicians often make, it is all about not fully grasping the nitty-gritty of the mechanical stressors, especially the concerning that complex backbone of ours, the spine. So let's break it down. Picture this, right? Your patient's in pain, but it's not always the same intensity. It's not always in the same spot. Sometimes it flares up out of nowhere, and other times they're fine doing things that should hurt, right? So sometimes they're doing nothing and they're in a lot of pain. Sometimes they're doing a lot of things and they have no pain. And they don't understand it. You don't understand it. What gives? It's all about the mechanical stressors, right? They're like the unseen puppeteers pulling the strings behind your patient's pain. There's load, right? Which you can think of as the pressure that your body feels, like internally in different positions. Load is really, you can look at it with just internal loading, right? The forces that are imparted on the spine internally. And then there's position. Position is relatively simple. Are they flexion, extension, side bending, or rotation sensitive? It does get a bit more complex though, because you can have a positional sensitivity only with a combination of these things, right? A patient might be able to perform each of those directional movements independently, but when they combine flexion with side bending, for example, to hold the railing going on the stairs, that might be provocative. Or when they combine rotation with side bending to put on their seatbelt, that might cause pain. And then what about neural tension? Neural tension is all about the patient's ability to tolerate stretch on the nervous system. And just because you have a positive neural tension test does not mean that you should be going and prescribing neural flossing or neural glides. You have to check to see if they have a neural adhesion, and it needs to be addressed. That needs to be addressed. Let me say that again. You have to check to see if they have a neural adhesion that needs to be addressed to improve neurodynamics, right? Because chances are they might just be in a situation where their nervous system is gliding perfectly fine and they have a pain generating sensitivity that should be respected for the time being, meaning the neurodynamics are not impaired. The nerve glides around totally fine, right? The string through the straw. And the problem is they have a sensitivity that generates pain, not that their nervous system is not sliding around. Also, just an FYI here, there are a lot of patients that have that chronic sensation of tightness, right? That they're not tight at all. And that sensation is generated from a neural tension sensitivity, right? And they're going around and stretching all the time. It's not good, right? If you're not differentiating between a neural adhesion and the nervous system just being sensitive to stretch, it ends up with a lot of patients who might feel better in the moment, right? But are in pain long term because you aren't teaching them how to facilitate an environment within the body that's conducive to healing. That same person goes and stretches because it feels good in the moment, but it aggravates things and keeps them in pain long term. Just because something feels good in the moment does not mean it's good, right? Smoking crack makes people feel good in the short term too. But what happens when people keep smoking crack? Yeah, keeps them in pain long term, okay? And then we have static position intolerance. And these are typically the body type that you'd expect to be more hypermobile, but not always, right? The classic sign is someone who can't stay in any one position too long, or it hurts, or always fidgeting and shifting, or that person that's always cracking their spine around, right? Here's where it gets interesting, right? These stressors don't work alone. They team up, they overlap, and they play tricks on you. But for clinicians, understanding the dance of stressors is like holding the key to pain relief paradise, right? Imagine this. You have a lumbar patient that's completely fine in a bent forward position when standing, but they have to lie in the fetal position because just lying supine hurts. There cannot be a load component to that, right? Because bending forward puts them at 150% of their body weight on their spine. When they're laying down, they have 25%. It has to be a positional sensitivity. Another example, a lumbar patient that has pain with sitting but can run fine. That can't be a load sensitivity because running and sitting both drastically increase the loading in the lumbar spine. That has to be a positional sensitivity. Think of a cervical patient that might have pain with lifting from low to high, right? Or just from reaching away from their body or letting their arm hang out in their center console in their car or on their window because it's nice outside and the window's down, right? No matter what position their cervical spine is in. Why? Why is that? Well, it's probably related to load. because the upper traps load the cervical spine when they're stabilizing and rotating the scapula. All right. So what about the lumbar patient that only has pain when driving? Right? Sitting is totally fine. But when they're in the car, they're combining a flex position, increased loading, and neural tension as they use the pedals. Are they sensitive to any of these? To all of them? Only when combined? Do you have a magical exercise to fix that? Probably not, right? Let's talk about empowerment. When clinicians like decode these stressors and share the secrets with patients, it's like handing them a magic wand. Suddenly, they're not just enduring pain, they're mastering it. They're making smart choices, they're modifying activities, and they're creating a healing haven within their own bodies. And here's the kicker, it's not just about feeling better today, it's about building a better tomorrow for them, right? Armed with this knowledge, like patients aren't just surviving, they're thriving. They're breaking free from their pain cycle, one empowered decision at a time. So clinicians, if you guys want to be like pain busting superheroes, you have to dive deep into the mechanical stressors, right? Because when you understand the unseen forces at play, you're not just treating pain, you're transforming lives. And guess what happens at that point, right? They start to have a good day. And then a good day turns into a good week. And then good weeks turn into a good month. We facilitate desensitization by promoting an environment within the body that's conducive to healing as close to 24 hours a day as we possibly can. And if you have patients that get better with exercise alone, honestly, the chances are that they would have just gotten out of pain naturally over time. This is what's going to help the rest of your patients, right? This knowledge is what gives them hope, a sense of control, and empowers them to be in control of their pain proactively instead of reactively responding to flare-ups, right? This allows you to confidently and competently reintroduce previously aggravating activities in an informed manner that avoids regression. This allows you to help patients walk back to living an unrestricted life, feeling in control and free of fear of their pain, right? Also, if you're treating, just a sidebar, if you're treating your spine patients based solely on their pain experience, you are entirely missing the boat. And that is what some people like miss. This is why patients get stuck in the I have a bad back or I have a bad neck cycle, because the absence of pain does not indicate health of the nervous system. Okay? The vital signs of the nervous system do. And almost guaranteed, your patients will feel better long before the vital signs recover, which compounds the importance of being intimately familiar with the mechanical stressors. All right. So the sixth mistake, right? Setting expectations is like laying down the groundwork for success. And a lot of clinicians miss the mark on this one. It is a huge mistake that can lead to frustration and disappointment for both them and their patients. Think about it like this, right? Imagine you're on a road trip and you've got no idea where you're headed or how long it's going to take to get there. Sounds pretty stressful, right? Now apply that same scenario to a treatment plan. Your patient has no idea what to expect or how long it's going to take to see results or what the path is to get there. They're going to feel like they're driving blind. And that's why it's crucial for clinicians to set appropriate expectations right from the get-go. Lay it all out on the table. What the treatment plan entails, how long it's going to take, like what kind of results they can expect along the way. When you're transparent about the process, you empower your patients to be active participants in their own healing journey. So clinicians, let's make sure we're setting the stage for success by setting those expectations early and often. It is the key to a smoother ride for everyone involved. I want to open a whiteboard real quick and share something, draw something out for you guys. Let me find this here. All right, new share. Boop. Whiteboard. All right. So when we're looking at setting expectations, right? What people want, this is supposed to be a graph. Listen, I've got really good handwriting in general. So if this is pain, right, over here, in red, and then we've got activity in green over here, patients feel like they're making progress a lot of times after this crossover right here. All right. So it is our job to point out to them that when they are in this area, right, when the activity is improving and the pain is staying the same, that is also improvement, right? And having this graph and understanding, being able to draw this out for people saves so much frustration. If their activity is able to improve and their pain baseline stays the same, they can tolerate more without having an increase in pain. That is improvement, right? Sometimes patients will start to notice that improvement when they're here, right? Like in this area here, they start to feel like, oh yeah, maybe I'm getting better. But oftentimes it's when they're over here. This is where everybody wants to be. And until they're in this area, beyond that interface, they don't really a lot of times feel like they're making progress. And when you can clarify this for them, it makes a lot of sense. So let's look at another graph real quick. One more, right? So everybody wants rehab to look like this. And I draw this out for patients too. They want rehab to do this. And that is just not what rehab looks like, right? Rehab is really a scatter plot where there's a bunch. Oh, can I make this bigger? Oh, whatever. There's a bunch of little dots, right? All around that you make for them. I don't know how to make this bigger, else I would. Right? We're making all these dots and it's up and it's down and it's up. But what happens is we end up connecting these dots and they're all over the place. And over time, what we're looking at is even if one drops down, it comes up, right? So the progress here linearly is not straight up, but over time it is up. So then I'll break this down and I'll say, hey, look, if we look at this week over week, what we look for is week to week improvements. So if this is week 1, right? And then this is week 2, and then this is week 3, each week we want to see is better than the week before, even though the weeks might have low points in them. Those low points are still better usually than your good points from previous weeks, right? And if I was drawing this bigger, I would make that more clear there, right? So it's normal to have ups and downs, but we want to look at things as a weekly progress. It's really hard to see day-to-day progress, but week over week, is this week better than last week? Is the next week a little bit less bad than this week? If the answer is yes, great. Then you're making progress. Does that make sense? All right, so let me get back to sharing my other screen here. Doop. Good. All right. So then from there, guys, taking weekend courses only is like building a house on shaky ground, right? Without that solid foundation, every new skill or technique that you try to add is just another layer of instability. I've heard from countless clinicians who feel like they're spinning their wheels, stuck in a cycle of replacing old skills with new ones without ever truly getting to the root of people's problems, right? Imagine trying to solve a complex puzzle without knowing what the picture is, like the picture on the box of the puzzle. You might have all the right pieces, but without that guiding image, you're kind of left fumbling in the dark, unsure of where each puzzle piece fits. And you might even be missing pieces of the puzzle and have no idea. That's why it's so important to prioritize building that foundation. And then once you have a solid framework in place, every new skill or technique you learn becomes exponentially more valuable. You're no longer just throwing tools at a problem and hoping for the best. You're equipped with the knowledge and the understanding to tackle it head on in a way that makes sense. So before you sign up for another weekend course, ask yourself, do I have a solid foundation to build on? If not, it might be time to shore up those essential foundational skills. Yeah, it might take a little bit more time and effort up front, but in the long run, it will save you from an endless cycle of frustration, uncertainty, and eventually burnout. Who else is feeling like Alan from the hangover right now, trying to keep track of all this information? Don't worry, guys, I've got you covered. Listen, there's so much valuable insight to share. It was hard to narrow it down. It's like trying to just pick one scene from the movie. It's impossible. But hey, since you're here at the summit, we've got something extra special cooked up for you guys at the end of the weekend. You got to wait to Sunday to find out what, though. We are on a mission to revolutionize the rehab industry, bring positive changes for athletes and active adults in the healthcare industry from the inside out, right? I'm Doc Raj, co-founder of the Performance Rehab Authority Certification and co-founder of the Performance Rehab Revolution Summit. Before we wrap up, I just, again, want to extend a heartfelt thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being proactive. And thank you for being a part of the movement towards a better healthcare industry. Keep leading the charge in inspiring change. I'll see you guys at the next talk. And don't forget to stay tuned for that special surprise we have in store for you guys on Sunday.